Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You are still watching the Lenovo LOL Collegiate League 2017 Spring Term. And of course, we are still on our day with a mixed conference because it was supposed to be North Luzon, but a few mishaps, a few withdrawn games.
Yes.
So we gave you Metro East earlier with a few UPD games, and now we're going to get into Mindanao. 2 games from Mindanao. So,
wow,
yeah.
From Manila to Mindanao real quick.
Yeah, Mindanao, Manila, Mindanao real quick, and then going back to Luzon after.
PH tour is real, definitely.
Yeah, that's definitely a tour for the LCL, and as we discussed earlier, it gives us pretty good perspective on the power level of these 3 conferences in relation to each other. Yeah, so it's really been a wild ride.
Yes,
those 2 previous games, unfortunately, 1 game was defaulted. So we're going to get into another game from Mindanao, or actually game A.
Of course, yeah.
So looking at the schedule, it's going to be St. Louis University Deus Volt versus Tarlac State University Firefox, which will be our game for now. That's game 4.
Yes, not to be mistaken as the browser, of course. We're talking about the team here, so
yeah,
that was so corny. I'm sorry.
That's fine. That's fine. Every caster that has sat in this room has had their fill of really corny jokes.
Yeah. But of course, by the way, I think, did we introduce ourselves yet? Of course.
Of course. I am Atlas, and with me is Arctic. We'll be your shoutcasters for Game 4.
Yes, very interesting game. So, like Atlas mentioned earlier, we're going to be heading straight down to Mindanao with our friends to the south. So, very interesting. As like I mentioned, LCL the split, complete step up, all the conferences, I'd say. So I'm really interested in seeing how Mindanao is keeping up with the onslaught of teams that we've been seeing lately. Like I mentioned, last season it was a little bit more predictable, but now like all my predictions all out the window. Like some of my favorites already unfortunately fell short of getting an auto qualifier because of low rankings in the ladder. But just goes to show anything can happen. The Garena LCL Collegiate League.
Anything can really happen. I know Vulcan is still going to talk about this if Mindanao comes up. Was the Rift Herald buff from Mindanao?
Okay.
Let's forget about that, because this is going to be new games with our teams for now. This is going to be Deus Volt versus Firefox. As I said, we're just going to wait for like a pick and ban phase to come up. But discussing this, I really think that I agree with you that everything about LCL this term, predictions just fly out the window.
Exactly.
Only few of the trends from last term are relevant now.
Yeah,
because everything's just been changed. There are roster changes. Some players graduated. Some players even moved on to PGS. I know you have a member on Emperor Esports from PGS who was from LCL.
Yes, Meme from CDSL. He's performed absolutely amazing. And there's a lot of talent. You know, it just goes to show that LCL could potentially be a stepping stone to becoming a pro player in the future, because we have seen a lot of successful people that were straight off fresh talents from the LCL going into the pro league. We have Raze, Neep, of course, is another one of those people. Meme, like I mentioned, one of the more recent acquisitions. So just goes to show you can go far through LCL.
Really, you really can go far. It just takes a lot of skill, practice, skill, discipline, and communication. I think being able to communicate well and have that really good team dynamic helps with honing a player into a powerhouse, not just individually, but as well if you put them in a team. It's sure that they'll be able to perform well.
Without a doubt.
Mesh. Without a doubt.
Because like people think that this is proven for me personally. What I've observed is that it doesn't necessarily mean that you're within the challenger ladder. This automatically translates to you becoming a pro, because some people, they have high mechanics, but it doesn't necessarily translate into a team environment, which is why some people, they're good at solo queue, but all of a sudden when they enter the arena of when they're actually in an organized team, they falter because they're so used to playing the I game, where in League of Legends, like I mentioned, like I continue to preach, it's a game about teamwork. There's a lot of patience involved as well. So yeah,
there is no I in team or League of Legends.
No,
that's really a lot of
actually.
That's really a mistake that a lot of players like in lower elos, like it's all about me. The game is all about me. my team is nothing without me.
Yeah, you go.
But if your team is nothing without you, and your team is also nothing with you, that says a lot about each player within the team. So let's get into the pick and ban phase between St. Louis University Deus Volt, God wills it, versus Turlock State University Firefox. String out our 6-ban system is going to be LeBlanc, very powerful mid laner, can do a lot. Very versatile ultimate as well.
Indeed,
yeah.
indeed.
The Ivern, very annoying to face. Definitely, FF does not want to face that. Kha'Zix, decently powerful assassin. KRX might be picking that one-up often. So, on the side of SLU, against SLU, Firefox is banned. Lee Sin, Rengar, very jungle focused. Because they do want that Graves, as they picked it, and the Lulu.
And I love the strategy that even in the previous games that we've casted, there have been instances wherein the jungler has been targeted. Sometimes it could be respecting the jungler as a dominant force within the team. It could also be because if you're going to look at all the rules, the jungle position is technically one of the has a narrower selection as far as the meta is concerned. Sure, there's a lot of jungle viable champions, but as far as the meta goes, there's quite a limit. But anyways, let's go ahead and check out the picks here, of course.
Yeah, checking out the picks, SLU started with a Fiora. They're really confident in their top lane there to graft that duelist immediately in the top lane. On the side of the response, it's going to be the Jason Graves. Loss of damage, lethality, folks. Responded to by the Nami and Syndra. What do you think so far of the first few rotations for the pick and ban?
Very interesting, actually, because if you're going to look at... Well, one thing about Tarlac here is they didn't really go for any form of priority. I wouldn't say maybe might have not gone for any form, because if you're going to look at it straight away, like literally...
Top, jungle, mid,
yeah, it's like
lane. Pretty
much in order here. So I'm not sure if it's intentional because they really want to prioritize these picks, or if it's more of an every man for himself thing. We'll have to figure that out later on. We'll see how that kind of goes for them. And then for SLU, of course, a little bit more organized here. I like the balance that they have. If you're up against a Jace, that's going to be a very interesting matchup.
Being able to riposte the burst coming from the Shock Blast is important.
Exactly.
And you can easily telegraph that, even if the Shock Blast plus Acceleration Gate combo, you can easily riposte that with enough mechanics. But looking at SLU's composition so far, I do like it. There's a good balance of everything. You've got a solid front line, high pressure jungle, early pressure jungler, plus Legolas and Savvy. Legolas has been doing a lot on his AD carries, especially Lucian. Indeed. So I'm expecting a lot from Legolas on this game. But you said, yes, jungle is one of those roles that is high impact.
Indeed.
High impact in the sense that whatever the jungler does, whether he succeeds or screws up, it affects the entire game.
Indeed.
Which is why I think that this meta is very jungle-centric on how strong your jungler is, how he can coordinate with the rest of your team, with your top lane, with your mid lane, and especially your bot lane. I think controlling the Drake, if a good one comes up.
Indeed, indeed. And if you're gonna look at Tarlac State University's composition here, I'm a huge fan of the picks individually. Whether or not this translates to an actual team comp that synergizes or works as well with each other, I'm kind of worried, because if you're gonna look here, they don't really have that super duper solid CC that really hard.
They don't have CC, they don't have a front line either.
Exactly. It's more of an, like, the only CC that they have through the charms, through the kind of the knockback from the Jace, as well as the stun that the Karma has. It's more of individual CCs, as opposed to SLU, which has more of something a bit more reliable, I'd say. So we'll just have to see how this goes. Based on what I'm seeing here, Tarlac University, for Tarlac, they have to kind of like go boom right off the bat.
Yeah, they really need to take these picks up. Like there's an Ahri, a charm into the burst coming from the team will be pretty effective. If they can isolate targets, then definitely their composition will be able to capitalize on that. But if the team stays together, gets their vision out, I think that SLU has a pretty good chance here. Because considering the composition, yeah, I'm really worried that there is no reliable engage, there is no reliable disengage, or as well as no reliable front line. That's actually, I think, the biggest thing. Because without a front line, then Legolas, if he scales later in the game, can just easily weave in and out and deal lots of damage as that Lucian. So pretty worried, but if they can pull it off, if they pull their cards right.
It's not necessarily, it's just that there's a lot more safety with the composition that SLU has. while with the red side, they really have to go. I feel like they have to establish a certain level of dominance early on to make up for the fact that they do lack a lot of key CC going into team fights right here. So we'll just have to see go. Again, like I mentioned, anything goes here in the local collegiate league. So we'll just have to see how both teams play out their compositions, if they'll be playing to their win conditions and their key strengths.
Yeah, that's really the most important thing. Is the macro play and being able to play to your win conditions. Because if you're like playing an all-out composition like Firefox here, but you try to go too much into like sieging other stuff, if you lose that focus, your win condition might just fade away.
Indeed.
Especially with a composition as volatile and as squishy as what they have drafted. But yeah, looking at the balance, the all-around balance of the teams, I think that SLU has a pretty good chance here.
Indeed. Statistically and more logically speaking, with
just looking at it at a vacuum.
Yeah, there we go.
But of course, when you're actually in the game, there's a lot to take into account. There's communication, there's tilt, there's the stress as well. So they really need to mind that. Of course, we as the casters and the viewers are not able to look in that internally, but you will be able to see that the execution of these two compositions.
Exactly. And that's actually a good point that you made there, because based on experience, like a lot of people, they like to go into the analysis of the compositions without actually considering potentially player skill levels individually and generally mindsets in general, because sometimes you could be the best player, but if you're, for example, when it comes to, I've seen types of these kind of players wherein they excel so well, like whether they're solo queue, 5v5s, like if they're alone, but when they go into these high pressure situations such as tournaments, they clam up a bit, they get a little bit nervous, and that's natural. I mean, it's human nature, but those are some of the factors that you have to consider here, ladies and gentlemen. It's not necessarily all about the compositions. You could go deep into analysis all day, but at the end of the day, sometimes you also have to put into consideration how the players perform as well, both in terms of mindset and of course in terms of how each of them plays individually. So
the mindset, I think, is one of the most important parts.
There you go.
I always talk about that on stream, how mindset is always the first step in a successful esports team, or even as an individual player. Because if you go into a match not thinking right, not getting into the right mindset, not getting to the zone, that's just going to jeopardize you and especially the rest of the team, because it's never about you.
There you go.
And even these casts are never about the casters. It's always about the game. It's always about the team and about the scene as a whole. And that's something that I want a lot of viewers, the player base, to learn, not just here in the Philippines, but as well on other regions, from C to NA, EU, Korea, everywhere. As even Faker realizes that he couldn't have succeeded without the rest of his team.
Exactly.
And Faker is undoubtedly the best player in the entire world.
Yes.
But without his team, it would have been easy to actually just pile onto him and destroy him in game.
Sometimes it could be the best player, and I could definitely say that it's true based on experience. I mean, I've worked with an LCL team, I've worked with a PGS team, we got to fly to Taiwan and experience competing against international teams. So one common denominator definitely is that, I've had players even for, let's talk about TIP last split. Individually, they're definitely awesome. But the thing is that you also have to account the players' mindsets, and I feel that that's something that a lot of people tend to underestimate, because you could have 5 solid players, but if the harmony, how they synchronize, how they communicate isn't there, it could just generally fall off just because of the disputes in game, they don't agree to a certain call, they're not on the same page, or because they couldn't make a call right away, there's hesitation. But hold that thought right there. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be going into our 4th game of the day between SLU versus TSU. Magic Carpet Ride on Summoner's Rift is definitely real for this game.
We're going to see that blue team SLU walking through the front lane there in the mid. So we'll see what SLU is trying to do here for the level 1. What do you think is going to happen here, Arctic?
I love it when teams kind of go for that, try to find something they could do coming together early game, hopefully getting a pick off. But nonetheless, of course, ladies and gents, let's go ahead and do a rundown of the players on Summoner's Rift for today. In the top lane for St. Louis University, it's going to be Vince on the Fiora. In the jungle, we have KRX on the Rex side, Queen of the Sur side. In the mid lane, we have Antares on the Syndra. And to sum up the bot lane right here, we have Legolas not necessarily wielding a bow and arrow, but the guns on the Lucian for AD carry, and Savvy on the Nami for Le Support.
On the side of Tarlac State University, Firefox is going to be Uhiko on the top lane on that Jace. Chiquita on that Graves, and the jungling there is going to be Travit in the mid lane. Ghost Flash, Ari looking to roam. For the bot lane, it's going to be Lethal and Wraith on the Ezreal and Karma respectively.
Ooh, I love these names. Very, very interesting. But yeah, let's see. So, nothing really came out of them grouping up early on. So everybody going to go back to very standard starts here. So no surprise right there. Better safe than sorry.
Seems like Chiquita's going for the Wraiths here. Very painful camp.
Yes,
like
indeed.
The most high lethality camp out of anyone. But you see, even without killing the large raptor, it gets you level 2. It might be his timing, or might be transition that into something cheeky. We're gonna have to see.
Yes, indeed. So, but then again, looking at, because like certain jungle champions, they couldn't necessarily do that type of start just because of their vulnerability or because their skill set doesn't necessarily allow it. Graves definitely one of those champions because of the
end of the line,
there you
and
go.
As well as his natural AoE auto attacks, the buckshot, being able to just clear them out. That definitely we're gonna see if it's going to transition into any leads here or anything cheeky. Looking at it in the minimap, it doesn't seem like he's gonna find anything just yet, except for the Scuttle Crab.
Ooh, SLU taking a lot of harassment early on. Wraith and Lethal taking no prisoners right there.
Early level 2 come from TSU. They take advantage of it. Pretty clean for the trade there. Doesn't have to transition into a kill, just the pressure.
Okay, so very standard starts that we're seeing here, I'm not really expecting that much early on. Probably the occasional pokes in there, and of course, the jumpers go for any ganks. But I'm definitely expecting,
that's going to be a gank.
Right there.
KRX going to go flash on Burrow for the knock-up there, but seems like it won't transition into a kill. But Travit does burn his own flash in exchange for KRX's. Just a little bit of a pressure. Let him know that you can't just farm. We're going to have gank you, we're going to put pressure on you.
And
but,
yeah. Exactly. And sometimes people misconceptualize that when you expect a gank from a jungler, people think that the only way it becomes worth is that if you actually get the kill. But in this case, it doesn't necessarily need to become... In fact, kills are actually the bonus from a gank. But so long as you could exert pressure, then that's kind of what you're really after.
Yeah, that's a really good point here, because Travit did burn his flash. Now Antares has a higher chance of solo killing him.
Exactly.
If once he gets level 6 even. So we're gonna see that later once everything has been finalized for level 6. Antares and Travit for now top lane. Just a wee bit of farming here for both sides.
And now that I realize it's a little bit hard. Well, just trying to look at it from the perspective of how a jungler can hold it to the spot right there.
Vince and KRX might be looking for Chiquita here. They do find him with the Tremor Sense, but it seems like they're just going to lay around the shadows.
I love that name, Chiquita.
It's very yes.
Get that Hispanic drawl there. Seems to be Chiquita under assault here.
Ooh.
Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Has to flash back to where he came from. KRX will be trying to chase him down. Not much though, because Vince did fail that lunge over the wall.
Exactly. A lot of summoner spells being burned from TSU early on. This is going to leave them a lot more vulnerable. Actually, this is where the importance of having some sort of reliable CC comes into play, because aside from summoner spells, of course, for potential escapes when you do get some sort of pressure from the enemy, you need to rely on other factors such as your skills as well. Of course, you're going to look at TSU's comp. There's a lot more vulnerability now that, let's see, for Travit not having his flash, and then at the same time, Chiquita going to have a little bit more
trouble without the flash.
Exactly. Yeah. Not just necessarily from escaping potential invades, but also when he goes for ganks, because he can't really go harder in onto, translating this to potential kills when he ganks because of that lack of flash. Sure, he has that dash in, but other than that, there's not really much he can work with here.
Yeah, he has to be a lot more mindful about how he engages, how he ganks and counter ganks. And looking at the mid lane here, Travit forced out by Antares, and without the flash, he definitely needs to be more mindful, has to recall early even. This might give Antares the early level 6, which in turn, he does actually get the early level 6, which in turn might make Travet's time a lot harder in the mid lane if he can Spirit Rush out of, say, a gank.
Yes, indeed. So there. Oh, okay. I was kind of waiting. Like, okay, why was he moving? Okay, I was just kind of waiting for the creep to get to a sustainable amount where he could auto attack. But anyways, of course, going back into this game right here. So very silent, you know.
Yeah, still not a lot of action. No first blood just yet.
You know, but definitely, if anything,
that's not good. So that's gonna be Chiquita blast coning into KRX. That's a lot of damage on him, but KRX does not want to risk it. Savvy is there for a little bit of support, but just pushes Chiquita off his own jungle.
Yes, Chiquita getting the escape for that game. But yes, looking at this, if anything, I'm definitely expecting a lot more aggression from SLU just because they have the tools to exert a lot more pressure than the kit that TSU has. Like I mentioned, in order for TSU to really capitalize on the composition that they just really have to really go hard in this lane, try to win lane as much as possible because, like I mentioned, going into team fights, it's just going to be so hard for them.
And especially going for all these leads in lane as well with all those little details. It's going to be a little bit of trade-off. Or this might be actually an engage and all-in here. Legolas trying to go for that piercing light onto Wraith. Here comes KRX from the backside going for lethal. Wraith is still alive, not able to get that. Where is their mid lane? No, the piercing light just falls short as lethal flashes out. There's going to be a lot of summer spells. All 4 summer spells burned for TSU's bot lane. And really, that was pretty close.
Yes, indeed. But that being said, with all 4 summoner spells down, this only leaves the bot lane for TSU a lot more vulnerable. It's going to be a lot more hard
though,
for them.
The flash, and the flash actually, not even a charm, is going to leave that mid lane almost gank.
Exactly, and this is what I'm talking about here with the trouble that TSU will have in terms of ganking potential. As far as who might actually be able to get a kill, the only lane that I could potentially be seeing is the bot lane. Other than that, I'm saying,
okay, almost. The culling just falls short there, but Legolas and Savvy still continue to go for to just lunge on that bot lane turret.
Yes,
indeed. Vince, very dangerous position here. That's going to be the to the skies into everything else. Repulses their shock blast, and that's a lot of burst away from TSU. They have to cut off that gank.
Yes, indeed. So as we definitely saw, you know, there's a lot of damage, and this is what TSU should be doing. Problem is, it didn't necessarily translate to a kill right there just because of the safety that the Fiora has, because of that riposte right there, and a very well-timed riposte right there, because if the Fiora used the riposte a little bit too early, then she would have eventually eaten the barrage of attacks.
And they would have been able to dive, I think, that because Ohiko does have that flash, and even though the Chiquita does not, might be able to just tank that a little bit. The True Grit helping him out.
Yes.
So fortunate for SLU that the riposte was able to connect.
Ooh, Antares taking a lot of damage.
Misses the Scatter the Weak. This Charm as well misses. Seems like Travet will just get his blue buff delivery from Chiquita, which actually gives a little bit of information to SLU to his position.
Yes, there we go. Ooh, okay, so that was taken care of. So, so we're seeing a little bit more of the same strategy happening for...
it's really by the book so far. KRX, too early on the draw there.
Yes, indeed, a little bit too far. And that lane, that wave was a little bit too pushed.
Yeah,
that translates
too far away from the turret as well to do any dives. So it was like at that sweet spot where Ohiko, okay, there's going to be Antares, the victim of a gank here, but gets the first blood with all the unleashed power spheres. Antares gets finished off by Travet.
Yes,
but yeah, that's a very quick gank, but Antares, with all those spheres set up, able to get a first blood ahead. And here comes Lethal, that gets knocked up by the Tidal Wave. Legolas takes a lot of damage from the True Shot Barrage, but not enough. Wraith hits him with a Soul Flare. Here comes Vince to try and clean up. That's going to be an easy kill with Savvy backing him up. But yeah, Savvy was not able to body block the Soul Flare there, unfortunately.
At the same time, I feel like Legolas could have backed off by then. Yeah. It was a little bit too greedy staying there, especially knowing that the Fiora would have easily have gotten the karma.
A little bit too greedy, but that does give them the Infernal Drake.
Yes, indeed. No, small miscalculation, but nonetheless, looking at the bigger picture, SLU is still coming out a bit bigger in that grade.
going to be a free Infernal Drake here, unless Chiquita can go for a cheeky steal here. But seems like he's just going to lose a lot of health. Vince is wailing on him with his rapier. Gets charmed, gets destroyed almost, but the riposte blocks a lot of damage. A heal from the ebb and flow, keeping him alive. Gets taken down anyway. Savvy, no mana. Here comes KRX and Antares for the support though. Oh, that's going to be Uhiko trying to go for that kill. Does get a double kill. Wraith here's here to back him up. That's a lot of damage. KRX still going in. Antares really wants his kill. The Scatter the Weak gets him that. Well, Legolas now joins the party. Seems like they'll just be going for this mid lane turret.
Yes, indeed. So ultimately, at that Dragon Pit, that was a 2-for. Actually, although at the end of the day, they still got Infernal Drake in. That's kind of interesting because, like I mentioned, TSU has a lot of damage, especially if they could get that snowball on. But with Infernal Drake going to SLU, it kind of helps balance things out a bit because that extra damage and amplification from the Infernal Drake will definitely keep them up to par with the damage output that TSU has. And like I mentioned, that's going to be a little bit more trickier for TSU, especially if SLU can kind of equal up to the damage that TSU supposedly has.
Yeah, they have to be more mindful about how they all in now.
Yes,
because now SLU has a little bit more of a chance. Ooh, that's going to be the culling, not connecting a lot. That might be the dive here. There is no support just yet for Lethal, but they give it up to return to the minion wave.
Yes, 6 and 4.
But yeah, it's going to be SLU being able to match TSU's brute force more. Indeed. And the longer the game goes, the larger the gold value of that Infernal Drake becomes.
Oh yeah.
So TSU really has to force an advantage here, or at least exploit a mistake that SLU might make in the next few minutes.
And it's kind of tricky because if you're going to imagine the Infernal Drake on champions like the Syndra, like the Lucian especially, imagine how painful the culling and the ult on Syndra would be. You know, just that one target with that damage amplification. That's going to be really painful, especially if a certain number of TSU does get bursted, especially the more squishier targets, such as Lethal, such as Travit early on.
Savvy positioning for a point-blank tidal wave does not connect the bubble, so that's going to be just one small miscalculation for SLU, and they have to back off.
Yes, indeed. Not exactly a little bit of a misprediction right there as far as the
but even
direction.
though the tidal wave and the bubble missed, TSU could not turn because Lethal does not have enough combat stats to fight just yet. The tier really delays a lot of his damage compared to what the Recurve Bow and Bilgewater Cutlass coming from Legolas. So let's look at the replay here for the Dragon fight.
Yes,
Vince just gets the jump onto Chiquita. That Ignite as well there to help him out. Flashes with him. So
yes, and if you're going to look at it here, Savvy actually not even having that much mana, so he can't really contribute that much in the fights anymore, plus the fact that he was taking a lot of damage from Uhiko here. So Uhiko, knowing that he couldn't really go for anything else, goes for the Nami, low health, no mana, it's a no-brainer. And as a result, you know, 2 for 2, very equal, but nonetheless, Drake still traded for SLU.
There's going to be more pressure for the bot lane here come from KRX. And really Lethal with their backs a little bit to the wall now. KRX trying to look for a gank, tower dive here.
I'd actually like the point that you were bringing up with the... Ooh, speaking of, I was actually about to bring up Legolas. Was already there.
It's going to be Ray. Oh, just flashes in. There's going to be a Lethal being dove here. Tries to flash. Burns a lot of his resources, but in the end, all for naught. They get the 2 kills plus a turret.
Yes, indeed. I'm feeling the summer in the bot lane right there. The dives and the waves. Oh my goodness. But Antares.
Yep. Misses a lot of charms. Misses a few of those crucial skill shots. Not able to finish off the kill against Antares.
Indeed.
Here comes KRX though to try and finish off a kill. He does not have flash. The game will be paused, which gives us a little bit more time to talk about the things that have been happening in the game.
Yes, indeed. So, based on what we're seeing so far, it's somewhat what I expected of SLU. Even though for the red team, they technically have a lot of damage. We did see earlier during that attempted gank on the Fiora, they were dishing out tons of damage. Unfortunately, a lot of it was negated because of the riposte right there. But nonetheless, SLU definitely playing to their strengths right here, like the tower dive, because of the CC that they can afford. And like I mentioned, even though they have the damage output Tarlac, the problem here is that they can't really dish out that full barrage of damage because of the CC holds from SLU. That being said, it's a little bit more tricky here. I feel like position is definitely key here. You know, they want to try to avoid as much CC as they can just so that they could get the maximum damage output. But you know, we'll just have to see how it plays out.
Yeah,
but
because they don't have a front line. Even though, let's say, as a total, they have 1,000 damage points. Without a front line, they're not able to consistently dish out the damage. So let's say not having a front line and not being always in position, that 1,000 damage points becomes like 600.
Yes.
While on the other hand, on SLU, they have a pretty balanced composition. Let's say on a total, their damage points amounts to around 500. Just 500, half of the raw potential that Tarlac State University has. But because they have a good front line, they can easily dive the squishies of TSU. Let's say that doubles to around 1,000. Yeah. So it's really, I mean, it's not a real formula, but it's something. It's like, but it's something to think about. Now, that CC, a good front line, a well-balanced team, does have a lot more raw, or rather, what's the value? The derived power, because raw power is what TSU has, but derived power is what SLU has right now with their composition, which has transitioned into their leads together with their own macro play.
Yes, it's very textbook-ish, you know, taking advantage of what innate strengths that their composition has. Going back to TSU, though, let's go ahead and try to scale in, like from the perspective of TSU. In order to kind of win this game, like I mentioned, it's all about early aggression earlier and trying to get as much snowball as they can individually, because what I feel they could have potentially capitalized on for the lack of CC is the fact let's say if the Fiora snowballs, Fiora going into a very fed Fiora going into the members of, let's say if SLU were behind at the time, you know, that would be very scary. You know, a champion that could easily decimate you right off the bat. Wait, no, not the Fiora, I'm sorry. Rather, champions like the Jace, like the Graves. It's actually the Fiora that was on SLU, my bad. But yeah, if any of these champions, you know, with the damage output that they have, just the threat of being able to take you down in that instant, that would have potentially worked. But that being said, SLU's, there's not really that much of an avenue for TSU to do that, just because of the lead that SLU has so far, plus the fact that they have the Infernal Drake intact, which kind of puts them up to par in terms of damage, like I did mention.
So let's get back into the game. Our players have reconnected. Wraith was DC'd a little bit, but now it's okay. So going back to the game with all of our insights that Arctic has given us, we'll see how TSU can bounce back from a 5K, 4.5K gold deficit, especially when their composition relies on them being ahead in gold so much.
Indeed.
They really need to snowball, but right now the only one really in the lead is Uhiko, who is really, at this point at time, pretty even with the top lane Vince, who is also pretty snowbally as a champion.
Yes, and you know, in this case, Uhiko, although he is ahead, and let's say he is the one that eventually snowballs, Uhiko isn't necessarily enough, because sure, he could go into these clashes, but there's just so many champions on the side of SLU that could easily negate an onslaught that Uhiko could go.
That's going to be a fight there, but Legolas goes for the unexpected drive-by on Vince, and Uhiko tries to fight Vince there, but in the end, not able to because the numbers advantage. Was not expecting the top lane, the bot lane to actually go up there, so it's going to be a lane swap here after Legolas took the bot lane turret there.
Yes, and I'm absolutely
now it's going to be Antares and Trouble. That's a lot of burst onto him, but the misses the end of the line. Chiquita not able to finish off the kill, which allows Antares to survive. Might even get the kill here with a knockup coming from KRX. They are still not ready to stop this fight. Travit has to force to go through in front of the tower because of the tidal wave. So this is a lot of pressure in the mid lane.
Yes, indeed. SLU going for the next Riba right there.
Ooh! And it's going to be Uhiko trying to go for the kill again, taking out Savvy. Now he's sleeping with the fishes. Now he's going to be taking out Savvy. Yeah, KRX will be the lone member of the team in this fight right now. He's still trying to fight, but because here comes Legolas with his Blade of the Ruined King. Just gets the triple kill, gets the exhaust. So now Uhiko is alive and Legolas is left without his team. Vince there for the support though, being able to clean up, so that's going to be a very sloppy fight from both sides.
Yes, indeed. Uhiko, I'm not sure walking up to Legolas, right? I feel like if there was a little bit more patience, he could have waited for his skills up. And I feel like he had enough damage output to take down the Lucian in at least 1 or 2 skills.
Yeah, but let's look at the replay here and how messy that was.
Very messy indeed. So here we go, 3 members of SLU converging onto Trav right here, but here we go. Legolas actually going for a flank. with Travis actually very low health, enough for Savvy to take down, but then again leaving the key members of SLU behind with Uhiko just ultimately going for a cleanup right here. Actually, Uhiko might have actually transisted to a clean ace had the Karma arrived a little bit earlier, plus the fact that a lot of the key players from SLU, well, no, TSU actually were taken down right off the bat. But then again, here we go, Legolas and Vince ultimately going for the cleanup, which ultimately kind of transcends to SLU side, but TSU actually had all the makings of working that fight in their favor.
But there's a lot of overcommitment from both sides there.
Indeed.
Very messy how they danced around that mid lane. Now Legolas, ooh, that's going to be Uhiko again trying to go for Savvy, gets stopped by the tidal wave and the bubble, which is a signal for Legolas to back off. There's lots of people around here.
Indeed. And I love how, so far, like I mentioned with TSU, Uhiko is definitely playing to what we should be seeing as far as what TSU has drafted here. But then again, I gotta commend SLU. I'm loving the rotations that we're seeing here so far.
Yeah, just freely get that Rift Herald, no problem. No trade as well as all. Lethal almost gets taken down. Gives a little bit of room for SLU to continue taking this bottom turret. Ooh, that's going to be Uhiko on the receiving end of a three-man gang in the jungle, trying to get that red buff. Does not end well for him.
Yes, indeed. No chance for a hammer time right there. And Vince, I actually failed to commend Vince here. Like, I was talking a lot about Uhiko, but looking at his counterpart right here, Fiora, 6-1-1. That's actually not a position you want to be in when you're running a competition such as
That's
TSU.
going to be Trevin trying to go for the bot lane here, but there's a lot of sustain from the Blade of Ruin King. Trevin not able to finish off just yet, but KRX and Antares able to take out Chiquita, and now going back in, Trevin able to finish off finally the kill onto Legolas. It's just 1-for-1 right now, but Vince is pushing that top lane very quickly.
Yes, and talking about damage output from TSU right here, one of the key problems here, which makes TSU struggle quite a lot, is the fact that if you're going to look at some of the other damage dealers, we've been talking a lot about Uhiko here, but it actually makes sense because if you're going to look at other key members of TSU, which actually supposedly deal a lot of damage, such as the Graves, such as Ezreal, falling quite behind, which is why TSU, as far as their win conditions, not really working right now. And SLU just capitalizing on that so hard.
Yeah, Uhiko just gets taken out once again. Vince, no need to play-by-play that. It was just straight up brawling from Vince. The aspect of the Rift Herald able to just let him overpower Uhiko.
Yes, indeed.
Not even close, even if you say that Vince got really low from that.
And if you're gonna look at it right now, 18-8, not exactly the best position for TSU rather right now. Plus the fact, at 20 minutes into the game, 10,000 gold lead.
Plus 2 Infernal Drakes. That's a lot of gold value.
Exactly, almost absurd in this case, but okay, there we go.
That's going to be Wraith, I think, with a few technical difficulties maybe, but that doesn't really materialize right now. Let's go back to our game here. SLU seems like they want to dance around the Baron bit. They are bringing out lots of control around that area, lots of wards, taking away everything that TSU can use.
Yes, and if you're going to look at it, actually, SLU actually has full dominance over this map, especially with the ward control that they have.
The stun comes from Antares. Not going to materialize that into a kill just yet.
Yes. So there you go. Quite interesting. Wraith actually. So a little bit worrisome right there. But anyways, looking at this right now, SLU, like I mentioned, having
sneaky coming from Legolas. That's a lot of damage from him, but the culling not at the right angle here. Gonna try for Shockwave, Shock Blast rather. Uhiko has a little bit of damage, but that is Chiquita. Really low, has to back off. This might be a chance for SLU to get that Baron.
Yes, in the end, that, ladies and gents, is very classic textbook Lucian gameplay right there. But here we go, SLU potentially going for this Baron. There goes the True Shot Mirage from Ezreal. Not exactly transitioning.
Pretty slow so
very
far.
Slow, actually.
TSU might even actually be able to reach this before they finish this. KRX is very low. Might be dangerous to continue this. Even the ebb and flow might be too risky. Chiquita, is he going to jump over to try and finish? No, that just leaves, cancels the Baron.
Yes, indeed. SLU playing a little bit more smarter. They're knowing very well that it might be a little bit risky, especially with, like I mentioned, SLU actually at par with TSU in terms of the damage output, but not necessarily in terms of what damage they can tank just yet.
Yeah, Uhiko is right behind here. Legolas gets that hammer from, but Uhiko takes the unleashed power, and Vince is just diving into the backline. Ebb and flow might keep him alive. Yes, it does. Legolas flashes in to scare Travis away. They're just going to take this turret down. Might be the next as well.
Yaut's objectives taken one after the other. SLU having a ball in this mid lane, transitioning from an inner turret now to an inhibitor turret. I wouldn't be surprised actually if this also transitions into an inhibitor taken as well.
That is rough for Chiquita, but has to flash away.
Yes,
and look at the damage coming from Legolas.
So hard for any member of TSU aside from the Jace to duel Legolas right now.
Yeah, that last Light Slinger, if it had connected, would have been the death sentence for Lethal, but they just take the inhibitor. Are they going for more? It seems like Vince is still hungry, taking down that bottom lane inhibitor turret, giving his team a little bit more time than inhibitor, but Uhiko jumps in, gets CC, does not get stunned by Scatter the Weak, but it's just going to be more time for the inhibitor to be taken down, and that's 2 nails in TSU's coffin so far.
Yes, indeed. Oh, goodness. TSU in quite a predicament right here. It's just so hard at this point because, like I mentioned, as far as their win condition right here, it's almost... I wouldn't necessarily say impossible, but it's somewhat near that because as far as what they should have been doing, it should have happened early game. But because of the fact that SLU has established such a dominance, it completely voids out whatever innate advantages that TSU has.
Yeah, and their composition really, at this point in time, with 14k behind, it's brute force. It's a brute force composition, but you can't brute force an enemy with a well-balanced composition that is that much ahead of you. And that's going to be Vince running away beside our search and win link here. Just fill that in, all the information plus the trivia. If you're right, you will get that mystery gift. But if you're the first and you're right, but if you're just right, you might be able to get a GPL ticket, which will be announced at the end of the stream today.
Oh, will Chiquita be able to get the steal though?
Ooh, he's not able to get a steal.
Yes, unfortunately, Legolas does manage to get that last hit.
But look at Vince just wailing onto Uhiko here. Gets the complete grand challenge there. Now he's looking for Lethal.
Exactly, and with quite the heavy timer on Uhiko right there with the Karma down, now this could potentially be the game.
Yeah, that's Baron buff on Vince as well. He has a Triforce, easily taking out these turrets, but he has 2 members to deal with. But look at the damage he does, and look at how much he regenerates from each vital taken out. So that's going to be Uhiko, Chiquita being taken down. Lethal is regenerating his health, but it doesn't seem like he has any power at all to defend this. It's going to be game set in favor of SLU as Lethal and Treven futilely try and take out Vince as all of these purple buffed super minions going on to the Nexus.
Yautza, and with that, congratulations, St. Louis University. Very, very well played, if I do say so myself.
Seems like St. Louis University indeed does live by their team name, Deus Vult.
Yes.
God wills it, and he wills that they win for this game.
Yes.
How do you think of the game?
To be honest, knowing SLU, I'd say they performed really well last split. So going into this game, I definitely had high expectations of them, and they definitely lived up to them. You know, they played to the strength of their composition. They knew very well that there were a lot of risks with the that TSU was running, and as a result, looking at the standings here, absolutely beautiful KDAs that we're seeing here all across the board for SLU, and Savvy taking it like a champ. You know, those deaths were actually necessary for the bigger picture of SLU.
Just a small sacrifice for what they needed. Do you think the composition had a large part to do with that?
Well, looking at it right now, I'd definitely say SLU, because you can't necessarily rely on, like I mentioned, it's not always about the composition. You also have to look at how players execute. So I could definitely attribute it as well, in a way, to the individual strengths of each player of SLU. So it's a mix. I'd say definitely it's a mix of both, not just the composition that they have, but the overall strengths of each player, which just makes the game definitely SLU absolutely outstanding.
Yeah, props to SLU. Congratulations for that game. But that's going to be the last game from the other conferences here. It's now going to be North Luzon. We are now back on schedule for our 5th and 6th game. It's going to be next game, which will be casted by Arctic and Vulcan, will be UC versus Holy Angel University.
Yes.
How? And this is going to be an intense because the top three teams 6-0, 5-1, and 5-2. How is 6-0, UC is 5-1, and then SLU 5-2 as well. So
para lang tayo nag-travel, you know. Para lang tayo nagbakasyon dito sa LCL na we're reaching all these different conferences. So very interesting day that we're having right here. But of course, congratulations once again to SLU. And yeah, we have been your casters for today. Once again, of course, this is Arctic at your service, and of course, with me is Atlas Sawakas. We will be right back, and stay tuned for Game 5 of the Garena Low Collegiate League.
Boys right behind me. Legolas gets that hammer from Uhiko, takes the unleashed power, and Vince is just diving into the back line. Ebb and flow might keep him alive. Yes, it does. Legolas flashes in to scare Travis away. They're just going to take this turret down. Might be the next as well.
Down to objective taken one after the other. SLU has
he has two members to deal with. Look at the damage he does. Look at how much he regenerates when he's Michael taken out. So that's going to be Uhiko, I mean rather, taken down. Lethal is regenerating his health, but it doesn't seem like he has any power at all to defend this. He's going to be game set in favor of SLU as Lethal and Travis futilely try and take out Vince as all of these purple buff super minions going on defense.
and with that, congratulations to the University. Very, very